Yo, what's up guys? We are out here in Mardin, Turkey. It's like 5:30 in the morning. I'm about to leave to catch my flight home soon, but I figured, you know what, while I'm here, what better time than to make a backflip tutorial. A lot of people have been asking about it, and I want to make that before I get into things like backfulls and stuff like that. So we're going to try to smash this thing out in the next 20 minutes or so, give you guys some good solid progressions that you can work on your own, without a gym, without a spotter, nothing. You can go out to some grass just like I'm at right now, and you can smash this out on your own. Just lots of practice, lots of patience, and taking your time to learn this flip correctly. Now before we get into this, I do want to talk a little bit more about how the backflip works, and that is, in order for a flip to happen, your hips have to go over your head and back down to the ground, right? Now you can think about your hips as your hips, but that's a little bit harder because it's harder to control your hips than it is to control your feet. So what I like to think about is, with a flip, my feet have to go over my head and back to the ground. It's the same thing with a backwards roll. And this is going to be really important when you start to get further into these flips, especially backflips, because if you can focus on getting your feet from in front of you to over your head and back to the ground, that keeps backflips really, really, really safe. I'm actually going to show you a demonstration. It's going to look like I died, but I want you to know how safe this actually is and how compromised my backflip can be. I'm going to land smack on my head. I don't recommend this at all. I've been doing backflips for a very long time, very comfortable with this. Since my feet are getting all the way over to the ground, it's a safe landing. It's a comfortable landing. So that's the importance that I want you to take away from this. Did you guys see that? I'm landing smack on my head. Everybody's worst fear with backflips. But because my feet are getting all the way over the top, straight back to the ground, it's a safe landing. When people bail this move, it's almost entirely because they jump up and they don't get those feet over their head back to the ground. They freak out. But if you can commit to getting those feet over your head, you'll be safe. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started with this backflip tutorial. The first step, make sure you go watch my last tutorial, the first one that I made, which is stressing the importance of handstands, cartwheels, and big dive rolls. The handstands and cartwheels are going to be massively important in this one. Dive rolls not so much, but still make sure you have those on lock. If you don't, go check out that video. Give yourself some time to practice. Get really confident with these things. If you're comfortable already, let's go ahead and move forward. Alright, so for step one of our backflip tutorial, we're just going to start out with a very basic cartwheel. That's it. I don't want you doing anything extra for now. I just want to see a nice cartwheel. Starting over here. And we're coming across from the other side. Once we have that, we're going to make it a little bit more complicated. But all we're going to do is do the second type of cartwheel, which is starting with our chest facing forward and end with our chest facing backwards. It's going to be pretty important to be able to control what your chest does during this tutorial. If you're having a difficult time with this, the key thing is just making sure that you keep your eyes on the same spot on the ground and you let your hips pivot in the air and you drop one leg down first. Should look something like this. Chest starts facing forward. It's going to end facing backwards. Go over the top, eyes stay in place, and I bring one leg down first. I slowed that one way down. You don't have to have that much control. You can take it a little bit faster. We just need to be changing the direction of that chest. Now for our next steps, the important part is being able to control what your chest does. It's actually going to be fighting to stay in the same direction. We want to keep it facing forward throughout pretty much this entire tutorial. So we're going to take our normal cartwheel and we're now going to turn backwards with it. I'm going to show you from the side. All I'm going to do is I'm going to step back with my leading leg. That is that cartwheel leading leg. I'm going to turn, look with my eyes behind me. My arm's going to come over the top. Second hand's going to follow, and I'm just going to finish out that cartwheel. Come here. Notice how my chest is facing the direction that I came from. We're going to do that one more time. Step backwards, look at the ground, arm comes over, and we're facing backwards. So step two is actually going to be backwards rolls. Now, I want to explain exactly why we're doing this. The goal behind doing these backwards rolls is to teach you where the power, where the flip from the backflip comes from. A lot of people think it's from our chest leaning back like this or our head throwing back. That's not the case. It comes from our knees and our hips going up and tucking to our chest. That is what makes us do the flip. So while we're going through these back rolls, that's the thing that I want you focusing on, is driving your knees up and over your head. What I like to do is I like to pick a shoulder to roll over. I recommend trying both, working with both. In the long run, you want to be efficient on both sides. With that said, I want you guys practicing both, at least until you figure out which one you like more. And then, you know what, if you really want to just get your back flip, feel free to just smash it out on one side. I don't care, it's up to you. So I'm going to start in this seated position. I'm going to lean back. I'm not going to throw myself back. I'm going to lean back, and I'm going to drive my feet and my knees over my chest and back to the other side of the ground like this. We can start very slow, very easy, very controlled, and just get over the top. That's completely fine. Get comfortable with a slow roll first, but once you're comfortable and confident with that slow roll and you know how it feels, I want you driving those knees as fast as you can, really feeling like you're doing a backflip while laying on the ground. And you should be able to feel so much power that you don't have to land on your knees. You can actually go straight to your feet, maybe with a little help of your hands catching here, but you should be able to get back up to those feet, just like this. More big drive. This last one, I'm gonna go straight over my head. I'm gonna use my hands here at my shoulders so that my neck doesn't crunch, and it'll just push up just a little bit. A good drill that I like to do, I like to have my students do, mainly to make this a funner time, because you do have to drill these things into the marrow of your bones so that you're comfortable moving forward to the actual flip. So what I like to do to make it a little more fun is start putting these into lines. It also teaches you about how you can combine things together to make a long line. We'll get into that much later in these tutorial series. But for now, we're gonna combine that back roll, trying to get up to our feet, going straight into that turning to face backwards cartwheel. So check it out. Start sitting down, roll back, stand up, go right into that cartwheel. Notice with the cartwheel, put my hand behind me, and then I cartwheeled backwards. Now, I want you guys playing around with this idea of combining these moves for comfort as we move throughout this tutorial. That's gonna make you better at putting together flow lines in the future. It's also gonna make you more confident with each one of these moves, and it's gonna spice it up a little bit so you're not just drilling the same thing over and over and over. You can actually take these moves, put them together, and in your own training, you can actually add some of the combinations that you come up with here into those lines that you're working on your own. I'm gonna refer to this next step as step 2.5, because it's not quite step 3, and you don't actually have to be able to do a macaco, but we are gonna go into a macaco now. So again, step 2.5 is gonna be a macaco. If you don't know what that is, it looks like this. We start in a low crouch, one hand goes behind us, and we kick our legs over, just like this. Now that's a full macaco. We don't have to do the whole thing. That's not important for us right now. The important thing is that we start low, kick our hips up, and as far over our head as we can, and then we can land kind of in a cartwheel position, something like this. Now, while you're beginning, you don't even have to have your hips go straight over your head. You can cheat them way over the side. Check this out. So we can even start like this to make it really simple. And then we can make it a little bit harder. And we can add a little more jump and make it a little bit harder. Now, we're starting to get that feel of our hips going over our head, similar to a backflip. But we have a lot more steps to go to until we get to that backflip. So that was only step 2.5. Let's get into the third one. Step 3 for our backflips is gonna be starting to add a jump into that backwards cartwheel that we already worked on. Now, this can be a little bit intimidating at first. It can be a little scary because we are jumping up onto our hands. Remember what I said in that first tutorial I made? You need to be able to take impact on your hands. That is crucial for learning so many flips. So if you are comfortable with that, let's move forward. What we're gonna do to make this a little bit easier, a little less scary, is we're just gonna start by jumping into a normal cartwheel first. I'm gonna face forward, I'm gonna jump up, and I'm gonna catch myself in a cartwheel. Does not have to be a big jump, just a little hop. Now, once we've done that, now what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna turn from facing forward. I'm gonna pivot myself to facing backwards, and then I'm gonna jump into my cartwheel. This is important because we're gonna do that pivot in the air in the next step. So I start facing this way, step behind me, pivot, jump. I'm gonna try to do it in one fluid motion. It doesn't have to be fast, but it's gonna be fluid. As we become more and more confident with jumping backwards into this cartwheel, what I want you to do is take away that pivot so that we're actually starting from a standstill facing this way. We can turn our head and our chest, but we jump from both feet. We don't actually turn and pivot all the way around. So check this out. Starting standing on both feet, I'd like to have one just slightly behind me for comfort. It's up to you. If you feel more confident with them together, go with that. For me, a half step back, turn my head and shoulders, and I'm gonna swing my arms up, over in an arc, just like a cartwheel, and then I'm gonna catch myself. Looking over my shoulder before I jump. That's crucial to keep this comfortable. Now we're actually going to step back, pivot, and jump, but instead of keeping a fluid, slow motion, what I want you to do is as you're beginning to pivot, that's when I want you to jump. Check this out. Step back, pivot, jump. So the pivot and the jump happens at the same time. Step number 4. This one gets a little bit scarier, but if you have the other one down confidently, it should be absolutely no problem. Aside from that little bit of a fear factor, you're just gonna have to get used to a little more commitment. What we're gonna do is we're actually gonna pivot our head after we've jumped into the air. So we're gonna be facing forward, we're gonna start that jump, and we're actually gonna follow our arms with our head. So it's gonna look something like this. As our arms swing up and over, my head is gonna come along with it, and I will be jumping at the exact same time. So watch this, I'll show you from straight on first. So we're here. I like to, again, have just a slight step backwards. Up to you, you can start from standing if you want. I like just a slight, tiny step backwards. So we're gonna go up, over, and just follow like this. We're still coming out just like a cartwheel. It's not a back handspring. It is a cartwheel. We're just jumping into it. One more time. I'm gonna have my feet together on this one. Again, my head is looking over my shoulder. It's coming up with my arms and turning to look over my shoulder. Practice, 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 practice. That is the name of the game for this one. The more practice you have, the more comfortable you will get, the better you can do this move. Film yourself. See how much you're turning before you're jumping. See how much you're going straight over the top or how much you're off to the side. I want you trying to attempt to get as over the top as you can. If this is straight over your head, I'm talking about your hips going straight over your head, then I want you to aim for something like this. So they're tilted a little bit, just like in mine, but they're not way over the side like that. Hopefully that makes sense. So as you practice this one, remember you can add them into lines, you can combine any of these together to make it a little more interesting. Your goal is to get higher and higher and higher to where you can really put a massive jump into it before you actually spot the ground on the other side. It's gonna get you more and more confident with jumping into your backflip without being able to see the ground, because that's the scariest part of a backflip. When you jump, you don't see the ground. Now the best part about the backflip is you do see the ground for the landing. So landing is actually one of the easiest for any flip out there. Just remember, this progression will take time. The next one is probably the scariest progression that we have. and it will take a level of commitment. So feel free to stick onto this step where we're looking over our shoulder and still committing to that cartwheel a lot. Just work on that like crazy until you have it down in your sleep. Then there should be no mental block on the next one. Step number 5, and the scariest step that we have, is gonna be committing to a back handspring. For this one, we will have to jump straight back with our head and our shoulders. Our hips should go straight over. It will be a full back handspring. If you can do the previous step perfectly, you have a lot of height and you can do it confidently, you have literally already done a back handspring. The only difference is our head doesn't turn now, our chin goes up and straight over our head. So what I like to do for this step is to actually do 3 in a row. I like to do 2 of the over the shoulder where my head is actually turning after I jump, just like the last step. And then the third one, I'm gonna go straight over my head. It will take a little bit of commitment, so make sure that you're confident with the last step before you move forward with this one. And remember, feet have to go over your head and back to the ground. If you ever hesitate, get your feet over the top and back to the ground. You might land knees, but it will be okay. Now, if you stop and you don't let those legs go over your head, then you're probably gonna land on your back, you're gonna land on your head, it's gonna hurt really bad. So get those legs over the top. Check it out. 2 over the shoulder, first one. Leisurely walk back up, catch my breath, go right into the second one. All right, I have that. Now I gotta go for that commitment. Catch my breath, give it a 3, 2, 1, and now you can cheat this by still turning your head a little bit, but making sure your arms go straight up. I don't like to do this. I've had some students that do enjoy doing that. It's up to you, but remember, the end goal is head straight back. Also take note, this is not a perfect back handspring. We're jumping up really high, catching on our hands. It's just for comfort to move forward with the backflip. That's our goal right now, not a perfect whippy back handspring that we can use. Step 6. Now we're gonna continue working on those back handsprings, pretty much just progressing those into backflips. I know how many people don't like this progression. I don't care. I'm teaching you guys outside. This will teach you some bad habits for your flip, but once you have the flip on lock, you can fix those bad habits absolutely no problem. I've gone through the same progression with literally hundreds of people and they all have perfect backflips now. Now this next step, we're still jumping up really high with that back handspring, but we're actually gonna keep our knees bent throughout this whole thing, similar to how we would do in a backflip. So with the back handspring, we usually go here and we leave our legs behind us. But now we're gonna pull them over the top with us. We will probably land low like this, but that is completely fine. That's actually what we're looking for. So check this out. Jump up just like the normal back handspring and then tuck those knees just a little bit. Not a tight tuck, but a little bringing up. Not all the way to the chest, but just about halfway. Something that I really like to do to make this more comfortable is not tuck my knees until I have spotted the ground with my eyes. That'll make it really nice because at that point, once you see the ground with your eyes, you know you're safe. Then you can tuck those knees and you'll be perfect. As you can see, as I work through this, my hands are actually barely touching. And that's what we're looking for because we are gonna take those hands away in the next few steps. So for steps 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, all the way up to 10 million if you want, it is just progressively getting that backflip higher, tucking those knees earlier so that your hands don't touch the ground. I'm not looking for a tucked backflip. We're not gonna put our hands on our legs yet. Our hands are what save us from the ground if we mess up. We always have those up for protection. But your goal is to just progress to the point where they don't actually have to touch. And there's a few things you can think about while doing this. The first one is tucking those knees a little bit earlier. As we jump up, start to tuck them earlier and earlier. So instead of waiting until you spot the ground, as you jump and your head comes back, that's when you can start tucking your knees. Now the second one that isn't talked about very often is actually what your chest does. Your chest, when we do normal back handsprings or backflips for a lot of people, it stays down here. Our eyes see the ground and our chest stays like this. Now what's gonna be really important for these next steps to get that clean backflip is pulling your chest up like this. Once you see the ground, continue pulling up to the top. Let's check it out. Pay very close attention to that chest. I'm not just leaving it low. I'm fighting to get it back up to the top. That's what's allowing my hands to not touch the ground. All right, our final step is to now we add that tuck. I only want you to do this once you know you can land on your feet without touching your hands every single time, and you're getting comfortable with that. Because now all we have to do is add a tight tuck and learn how to open properly. Once we can do that, we have a perfect backflip. So far, we should be right about here. Hands are still there for safety, but they're not touching the ground. Now, we're gonna swing those arms up just like before. We're gonna leave them up and we're gonna tuck our knees to our arms. Now this is important, this is really important. Our arms should not come down to our knees. It's okay if they go like this, that's fine. But they should not go here, then back to here. This motion is a front flip motion. It's gonna counteract your back flip. It's gonna be very slow rotation. It's not gonna be comfortable, it's not gonna be safe. Arms go up, we tuck our knees into our chest. Notice there, I didn't even grab my knees. They just went up and I tucked my knees as tight as I could. This time I'm gonna add that little bit of a grab. Now these don't have to be perfect backflips. This is just getting you to that first landed backflip. Once you can do that, you can experiment, you can tuck tighter, you can jump higher, you can start spotting things up high so that you don't lean back as much and you get more height. You can do so many things to perfect these, it's absolutely insane. I'll probably do a tutorial later on how to perfect your backflip, but for now, walking through these steps, taking your time, it might take months, but take your time with these and you can learn backflips on your own in the grass completely fine without a spotter. All right guys, that's it for today. Hopefully you guys got something out of this. I really hope that you guys can take this, incorporate it into your training so you can learn those backflips on your own. And remember, the goal of